Here are the top 9 200 IQ moments in Pawnstars history. From vintage treasures to historical artifacts, these episodes show intelligence, strategic thinking, and outstanding negotiation skills. Let's uncover these best moments. Number 9. The priceless 1941 Navy Sextant. In the episode The Offer, a seller walked into the pawn shop, and he had something exceptional. It was a Navy sextant from way back in 1941. This was not just any old gadget, it was a precision instrument that once helped sailors navigate the wild and perilous seas. The seller artfully presented his priceless find. He had a little warm-up chat with the pawn shop owner, and believe it or not, the owner, old man, had a Navy background too. The old man was alert and did not miss anything important. The two of them soon realized how interesting this tool was. They talked about what it was used for, how it helped sailors find their way on the big ocean, and other stuff. During their discussion, there was no conflict. Instead, they were trying to determine a fair price for this vintage item. And then the real action started. The seller started things off by saying that he wanted $390 for the item. He was not just picking that number out of thin air. Nope, he clearly knew this was a unique thing, and it had some history. But old man had an offer in mind, $200. And he did not ignore the item's charm when he gave his price. Now, what happened next is a lesson on how to make a good deal. The seller was patient and calm. He took his time to make the right move. With each offer and counteroffer, they were getting closer and closer to agreeing on a price. In the end, both parties showed off their negotiation skills. The seller started with a high price, but was willing to go down to $265, so they decided to go for it. The old man then told his assistant to close the deal at $265. It was a win for both sides, showing how clever they were in finding a solution that worked for the two of them. This deal was pretty amazing, but the next moment highlights another rare but exciting moment in Pawnstars. Number 8. The Martha Washington Silver Certificate. The episode First Lady of Pawn showed us another brilliant and intelligent deal-making moment. The story began with Brian, who stumbled upon a fascinating thing, an 1891 $1 silver certificate featuring Martha Washington. Excited by this fascinating discovery, Brian took it to the pawn shop, ready for an interesting deal. Rick Harrison, the insightful owner of the pawn shop, immediately recognized the item's exceptional worth. He went deep into the history of silver certificates, discussed their importance and the pledges they represented. Additionally, he also pointed out the outstanding condition of the dollar bill. However, things took a turn when Rick told Brian the concept of paper money grading. He mentioned the importance of getting the bill professionally graded, as the value of bills vary widely based on their condition. This added an element of uncertainty and complexity to the deal. But to ensure a fair assessment, Rick called an expert, Peter Trelia, who specializes in rare United States paper currency. Peter revealed the remarkable condition of the dollar bill. However, he noticed a slight centerfold. This prevented it from achieving the highest grade. Despite this, Peter acknowledged the bill's exceptional quality. And then came the pivotal moment of negotiation. Peter provided a retail value of $1,500 while subtly hinting that its potential worth could reach up to $20,000 if graded flawlessly. Whereas Rick, considering his profit margins, started with an $800 offer. Realizing the bill's value, Brian proposed a notable increase of $1,400. But Rick, being a wise businessman, offered $1,000. And he emphasized the item's fast sales potential too. Finally, the negotiation wrapped up with a compromise, and Brian accepted Rick's offer of $1,100. This episode brilliantly showcased the significance of expertise, condition assessment, and skilled negotiation in deal-making. Just like this deal, the next one is all about strategic thinking. Number 7. The vintage camera discovery. The one man's junk negotiation was a remarkable 200 IQ moment in the world of pawn deals. A seller entered the store carrying an intriguing vintage 16mm camera, a burnt mirror, with a seemingly simple wish to sell it. However, what followed was strategic thinking, expert consultation, and masterful negotiation. The seller found this unique camera in the attic of an old theater. She boldly set an initial asking price of $2,000. But Rick, being an observant pawn shop owner, realized that this item was not ordinary and chose to explore its origins. First, he asked the opinion of an expert, Martin, who specializes in Hollywood memorabilia and antique cameras. Martin's extensive knowledge quickly uncovered the camera's rich history, with Burnt and Marr being renowned pioneers in the field. He mentioned that the camera's rarity and its impeccable condition made it a standout collector's piece. This revelation was the turning point, transforming the deal into a 200 IQ moment. Meanwhile, Rick learned that there were practically no auction records for such cameras, as most were secured in museums. This rarity factor opened a world of possibilities for the camera's value, turning it into a prized possession for collectors. Thanks to this, Rick was in a far better position for negotiation. The seller's initial request for $2,000 suddenly appeared modest, given the camera's unique status. But Rick made a bid of $1,400. He had doubts about its functionality. Well, this tells you all about his keen business sense. However, the seller knew that this piece was something special, and her attachment to it was clear. This became a crucial element in the negotiation. Rick increased his offer to $1,500 as he understood that this vintage treasure had a special place in her heart. In a brilliant twist, the seller reluctantly dropped her request down to $1,600. And Rick, who has already proved his expertise in reaching agreements in many deals, settled at $1,550. The deal was done, and Rick went away with exactly what he wanted. That was a super smart move from the Pawnstars, and the next moment also shows us how a great deal is done. Number 6. World War II Fighter Jacket. In one of Pawnstars' most interesting episodes, we witnessed the trading of a World War II fighter jacket. Rick was in the hot seat, facing off with the owner of the one-of-a-kind fighter jacket. And we're all familiar with how good he is at making strategies that can adapt to any situation. He started by offering $1,500, but he was being careful. He knew that the jacket was important because of its history. But there was a big surprise. The owner demanded a higher value, and it was $10,000. Now, Rick wisely acknowledged the high price, but also stressed the item's historical value. As the conversation went on, he had a clever trick. Slowly but surely, he increased his offer to $2,000, taking market fluctuations into account. And then he did the smart negotiating trick. He offered money immediately, no waiting. You see what he did there? Well, he tapped into the seller's itch for instant gratification. But the seller wasn't ready to fold just yet. He kept pushing for $2,500. Rick stayed confident, and he did not change his mind about the price, $2,000. And at the end, he successfully persuaded the seller to see things his way. Rick's not just any negotiator, he's an expert. And the next entry solidifies his position even further. Number 5. Circus Calliope Antique Charm. The break room battle wowed us with a clever and strategic exchange of a retro circus treasure, the Calliope. The seller, Ken, showed this antique artifact to Rick. The Calliope, a magnificent relic of Americana, is a very loud musical instrument that would announce the arrival of the circus as it rolled into town. This particular one, a Tangley Model CA-43 from 1924, was a traditional piece designed to run on compressed air rather than steam. However, the Calliope had seen better days. Signs of wear and tear were evident, with replaced parts and some non-functioning keys. Ken was eager to sell it due to limited space and aimed to get $5,600 for it. Rick, the sharp negotiator, had a plan. He knew that to make this Calliope marketable, it needed to undergo a major restoration. Ken agreed to let him consult an expert, confident that the antique value would shine through. So Rick called Roy, the restoration specialist. He examined the Calliope's potential and confirmed that it could be restored. The estimated costs were around $1,000 for woodworking and a few thousand more for a compressor. However, once restored, the magnificent instrument could fetch $10,000 to $12,000. With Roy's evaluation in hand, Rick proposed his terms, showing his clever bargaining abilities. He finalized an arrangement at $4,000, which Ken approved. For Rick, it was another project added to his collection, and for Ken, it meant he was $4,000 closer to his dreams. Next up is a clever deal that turned an antique relic into a remarkable investment opportunity. Number 4. The 1861 Charlotte Minted Coin. Now, this one is a fascinating 200 IQ moment. This episode kicked off with a customer who entered the pawn shop with an 1861 Charlotte Minted coin. And at the opposite end was Rick once again. Now, he did not just dive right into the deal as the customer showed him the coin. Nope, he showed off a bit of his history knowledge. He began by educating the seller about the coin's significance. He highlighted the rarity of coins minted in Charlotte during the Civil War due to the Carolina Gold Rush. And you know what? Rick's knowledge makes people trust him more during the negotiation. That's because it shows that he's no rookie in this business. But wait, there's more. Despite the discussion, the seller seemed a bit nervous about the coin's worth. He thought that it might just be pretty, but not very valuable. But Rick was all set. He shared some more essential information, saying that this coin was often copied by sneaky people who make fake ones. Later on, he revealed that this seemingly ordinary coin can turn into a collector's dream worth $10,000. But things didn't end here. Rick then invited an expert, Mike, to join the party. And guess what? Mike gave a green signal on the coin's authenticity and value. Now it was time for Rick to pull off his grand finale. He took control of the negotiation and got an offer of $8,000. This was much more than the original value of the gold. Plus, he also agreed to help check if the gold was real, which showed that he wanted to cooperate and make a fair deal with the seller. With his cleverness, strategy, and a touch of teamwork, he made a deal that made everyone happy. Much like this moment, the next one is equally brilliant. Number 3. The Colt Single-Action Army Revolver. When talking about clever and intelligent deals, the exchange in stick-to-your-guns was a true masterclass. The main subject was the Colt Single-Action Army Revolver, a piece of history that redefined high-tech in the 1870s. And this wasn't your run-of-the-mill firearm. It was encapsulated in metal and wood. The revolver had cartridges, pinpoint accuracy, and interchangeable parts, giving it an edge over its contemporaries. The grips alone were a work of art, adorned with a Federal eagle and shields. But it cost twice as much as any other comparable gun. It was the dream gun of every Colt collector, and it had seen its fair share of the limelight in Western movies. The episode then introduces us to a sharp owner who found himself in possession of this Colt due to an unpaid debt. And he wanted a $25,000 sum for the gun from Old Man. But there was a twist. A review of the impressive firearm indicated that there might have been a factory mistake in the serial numbers. It's a typical issue for engraved and nickel-plated firearms. Now, Old Man was intrigued but careful too. He needed reassurance and expertise. Could this be too good to be true? That's when he called in the gun expert to validate its authenticity. This Colt Single-Action Army, with its 7.5-inch barrel and intricate high-relief grips, had made its mark in history books. But there was a problem. The serial numbers were not all perfectly matching. Yet the expert argued that these were hand-stamped. In such cases, uncertainties could occur. In other words, it probably was authentic. And now for the grand reveal. What was this piece of magic worth? The expert confidently stated it could fetch $35,000 at auction, possibly even exceeding $50,000. The gun was a true gem, a collector's dream, and an investment that promised substantial returns. The negotiation began, involving back and forth offers until an agreement was reached at $27,500. The buyer was pretty happy with the deal and planned to take his family on a luxurious vacation. Next up is a 200 IQ moment that features another piece of history and the art of deal-making at its finest. Number 2. Keith Haring Art. Biggest buys began when a seller introduced Keith Haring's artwork to Rick. the fascinating backstory behind the artwork connected to Keith Haring's lover's lover, and it was a one-of-a-kind tale that Rick and the seller both found amusing. Despite having initial doubts about the artwork's cartoon-like style, the seller's thorough investigation revealed the profound influence and iconic status of Keith Haring's 1980s work. Rick understood the value of these creations, and he shared his excitement about displaying them in his shop. But he needed to be sure about the authenticity. That's when he called an art expert, Mike, for an evaluation. Mike's thorough analysis revealed the unmistakable Haring style, and thanks to him, doubts about any forgery were cleared. After that began the part that everyone anticipated, the negotiation. The seller asked for an initial price of $75,000, and Rick again consulted Mike for a professional assessment. Mike estimated the value of the two artworks in the range of $40,000 to $50,000 each. So, Rick returned to the negotiation table with a thoughtful offer of $45,000. The seller, however, stood firm at $50,000. And finally, the deal was closed at $48,000. That deal must have felt pretty good on all sides, but it still doesn't match the next deal on our list. At number 1, we have the most iconic 200 IQ moment in Pawnstars history. Number 1. The 32 Lincoln Roadster, $95,000. In the epic episode By the Book, we meet a seller named Phil who brings in a 32 Lincoln Roadster, and he wanted a jaw-dropping $100,000 for his old car. Even Rick Harrison thought that was a lot. But why was he hesitating? It was because this vintage car was not in great shape. And that's an important factor that helps the Pawnstars to figure out how much something is worth. Rick knew that a really nice 1932 Lincoln Roadster could sell for about $170,000. So this deal became a showdown. Phil did not want to lower his price, and Rick did not want to overpay him for a car that needed fixing. But here's where it gets exciting. Phil had an out-of-the-box idea. Instead of bargaining like usual, he said to Rick that he was willing to sell the car for $95,000 worth of gold. Boom! That's the moment when you realize just how brilliant the negotiation process can get on Pawnstars. Now, legally, Rick could not have directly exchanged the old car for gold due to the shop's operating procedures. However, here's where the 200 IQ moment came into play. Rick agreed to give him $95,000 in cash, and Phil, in turn, purchased $95,000 worth of gold from the shop. This deal was a bit unusual, but it showed how pawn shops can be pretty flexible and great at solving tricky problems. In this case, Rick did something really cool. He went along with Phil's special request. And guess what? They didn't just get the 32 Lincoln Roadster, they made history on Pawnstars with one of the most intelligent and most unforgettable deals ever. As the episode came to an end, Phil joked that he was going to bury the gold somewhere so nobody can find it. The 32 Lincoln Roadster episode tells us that success is not solely about bargaining over prices. It's about thinking outside the box, finding creative solutions, and ensuring that both parties walk away satisfied. But it's not just pawn deals where you'll see some super intelligent moments. Gambling is known for super smart people too. You don't want to miss out on the video on 200 IQ moments in gambling.